You could spend years building a relationship with an avoidant person. You could show up consistently, you could give them your time, your energy, your emotional availability, but here's what happens. The moment you need them to reciprocate, the moment you ask for the same investment back, they disappear. And you're left wondering what you did wrong. But you didn't do anything wrong. You were just never their priority. Because avoidants aren't actually loyal to people. They're loyal to something else entirely. And when you understand what that one thing is, everything changes. You stop blaming yourself. You stop trying harder. You stop making excuses for their behavior. Because you finally see the pattern clearly. And it's not about you at all. This is something most people get completely wrong about avoidant attachment. They think avoidants don't care about connection, but that's not true. Avoidants care deeply. They're just loyal to the wrong things. And once you know what those things are, you can navigate these relationships with your eyes wide open. So if you're dealing with an avoidant right now, or you suspect you might be one yourself, stick around because this changes everything. Drop a comment and type the word freedom if you've felt abandoned by someone who claimed to care about you. Tell me in the comments which pattern you recognize the most. Share your story below so others know they're not alone. Let me know what resonates with you most down below. Now let's dive in. What is an avoidant person actually loyal to? This is the key question that nobody asks. People assume that avoidants are just commitment phobes or emotionally unavailable, but that's a surface level understanding. The truth is much more interesting. Avoidants are deeply, intensely loyal, just not to people. They're loyal to their independence. That's the thing. Their independence is like a religion to them. It's sacred. It's the one thing they will never compromise on. Think about what independence means to an avoidant. It's not just about doing what they want when they want. It's deeper than that. It's about never being trapped. It's about never feeling like someone else has control over their emotional state or their choices. For an avoidant person, the moment they feel like you're becoming important to them, something happens in their brain. An alarm goes off. A warning system activates. Because in their mind, importance equals vulnerability. And vulnerability equals loss of control. So what do? They pull back. They create distance. Sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly. And they tell themselves it's the right thing to do. They tell themselves that they're protecting themselves, but what they're really doing is protecting their independence. That's their one loyalty. That's the thing that matters more than anything else. More than the relationship, more than your feelings, more than the promise they made. Let me give you some examples so you can see this pattern clearly in your own life. Maybe you're dating an avoidant. Things are great at first. You're getting to know each other. There's excitement, there's chemistry. But then at some point, usually after a few months, something shifts. They become less available. They take longer to text back. They make plans less often. You start wondering if you did something wrong. But here's what really happened. You became predictable to them. And predictability means you're starting to matter. And if you matter, they might lose their freedom. So they pull back. And when you get upset about it, they tell you that you're being too needy, that you're being too attached, that you're asking for too much. But what they're really saying is you're threatening my independence. You're getting too close to being important to me, and I can't allow that. Or maybe this happens in a friendship. You have a friend who's like this. You're there for them constantly. When they're going through something difficult, you show up, you listen, you support them. And they seem grateful in the moment, but then the next time you need them, they're nowhere to be found. They don't return your calls, they don't show up when they said they would, and when you confront them about it, they get defensive. They tell you they have their own life, that they can't be responsible for your emotional needs. But what's really happening is their independence is being threatened. You've become important to them, and now they need to reassert their freedom by proving that they don't actually need you. This is the core pattern with avoidance, and understanding it is everything. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. You realize that their behavior has nothing to do with your worth. It has nothing to do with how lovable you are. It has everything to do with their internal conflict between wanting connection and needing independence. Here's what makes avoidant attachment so destructive in relationships. It's not that avoidants are bad people. Most avoidants are actually wonderful people. They're thoughtful, they're intelligent, they're often very successful, but there's this part of them that's terrified of losing control. And that fear is bigger than their capacity to love someone consistently. So you end up in this exhausting cycle. You get close, they pull away. You try harder, they pull away more. You give them space, they come back for a bit, and then the cycle starts again. And the worst part is that you're constantly second-guessing yourself. You're wondering if you're doing the right thing. Should you chase them? Should you give them more space? Should you just accept that this is how they are? But here's the thing. None of those strategies work because the real issue isn't about space or communication or effort. The real issue is that they're loyal to something that will never be you. Now, I want to be clear about something. There are degrees of avoidant attachment. Some people are mildly avoidant. They might need more independence than average, but they can still show up for the people they love. They can still make compromises. They can still prioritize a relationship sometimes. But then there are the ones who are deeply avoidant. And with those people, independence will always come first. The question you have to ask yourself is, can you live with that? Can you be in a relationship with someone who will always choose themselves first? Because that's what you're signing up for if you're with an avoidant. You're accepting that when push comes to shove, they will prioritize their freedom over your relationship. They will prioritize their comfort over your feelings. They will prioritize their independence over your togetherness. Some people can handle that. Maybe they're avoidant too, and they understand the dynamic. Maybe they have their own independence that matters to them just as much. Maybe they're not expecting their partner to be emotionally available, and that's fine with them. But most people can't handle it. Most people need more. Most people need to feel like they matter. Most people need to feel like they're important enough to their partner that their partner will make changes and compromises for them. And that's where the real pain comes in, because you're trying to love someone who's incapable of being loved in the way that you need to be loved. You're trying to create intimacy with someone who is fundamentally terrified of intimacy. You're trying to build something lasting with someone who is always looking for the exit. So what do you actually do about this? How do you navigate an avoidant relationship? First, you have to stop taking it personally. This is crucial. You have to understand that their pulling away has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. It's not because you're not good enough. It's not because you're too needy. It's not because you're lacking in some way. It's because they have this internal programming that says, when someone gets close, I need to leave. And that programming has nothing to do with you. It was installed long before they met you. Second, you have to set clear boundaries, because avoidance will test your boundaries. They'll see how much they can pull away and still have you available. So you need to be very clear about what you need. You need to say, I need consistent communication. I need to know where I stand with you. I need to feel like I matter to you. And if you can't provide those things, I need to walk away. And you have to mean it, because avoidance can smell desperation. If they know that you'll accept whatever crumbs of affection they throw your way, they will keep throwing crumbs. Third, you have to ask yourself if this is sustainable. Can you actually be with someone like this for the long term? Or are you just hoping that they'll change? Because here's the hard truth. Avoidance rarely change. They might get better at managing their avoidance. They might develop more awareness of their patterns, but the core loyalty to their independence doesn't usually change. They might work through some of their stuff in therapy, and that's great. But at the end of the day, they're still going to prioritize their freedom in ways that feel painful to you. So you have to be honest with yourself. Are you willing to accept this person as they are? Are you willing to live with the inconsistency? Are you willing to be in a relationship where you can't rely on them to show up in the ways you need them to? If the answer is yes, then maybe this can work. But you need to know what you're signing up for. You need to go in with your eyes wide open. Now, let me tell you what happens on the other side of accepting this. Once you accept that an avoidant person is never going to be loyal to you the way you want, something interesting happens. You start to let go. You stop fighting for their attention. You stop trying to convince them that you're worth their time. You stop making excuses for their behavior. And in that letting go, something shifts. You get your power back. You realize that you don't need them to validate your worth. You realize that their inability to show up for you says absolutely nothing about your value as a human being. You realize that you deserve to be with someone who is excited to be with you, someone who chooses you consistently, someone who is willing to make you a priority. And here's the beautiful part. The moment you genuinely accept that you deserve better, that's usually when one of two things happens. Either the avoidant person suddenly feels your withdrawal and starts to panic because they realize they might actually lose you, and that can sometimes trigger them to start working on their stuff. Or you actually do walk away and you find yourself with someone who is capable of meeting you where you are. But notice that in both scenarios, you had to let go first. You had to stop being available. You had to stop trying. You had to accept that their independence is more important to them than you are. And from that place of acceptance, things can actually shift. I want to talk about something else that's really important here. A lot of people who are in relationships with avoidance tend to be anxiously attached. There's usually a dynamic where one person needs reassurance and consistency, and the other person is running away from that very thing. And this creates a really painful pattern. The anxious person is usually the one who's doing all the work. They're trying to figure out what the avoidant person needs. They're trying to communicate better. They're trying to give space. They're trying everything they can think of to make it work. And the avoidant person is usually the one who's blaming the anxious person for being too much, for wanting too much, for needing too much. But here's what's really happening. The anxious person is asking for basic emotional needs to be met. Things like consistency, reliability, and feeling valued. These are not excessive asks. These are normal, healthy relationship needs. But to an avoidant person, these asks feel suffocating. They feel like they're being trapped. So they respond by pulling away more. And this dynamic can go on for years. The anxious person trying harder and harder, the avoidant person pulling away more and more, until eventually the anxious person either gives up or explodes. And then the avoidant person acts surprised. They act like they don't understand what went wrong. But what went wrong is that they were never actually capable of being in a reciprocal relationship. This is why understanding avoidant attachment is so important. Because if you're anxiously attached, you need to know that there's nothing you can do to fix an avoidant person. You can't love them into security. You can't prove to them that you're worth opening up for. You can't show them through your consistency that it's safe to be vulnerable, because their fear of losing independence is bigger than any evidence you can provide that you're worth the risk. So the best thing you can do is stop trying, stop fighting, stop hoping that this time will be different, and either accept the relationship as it is or walk away. Because if you don't, you're going to spend years of your life trying to move a mountain that doesn't want to be moved. Now I want to address something that a lot of people wonder about. Can an avoidant person actually love someone? The answer is yes. Avoidants can love, but their love looks different. Their love is conditional on their need for independence being protected. So they might love you when there's distance. They might love you when you're giving them space. They might love you when there's no expectation of emotional intimacy. But the moment they feel like love is requiring something from them, the moment they feel like you need them in a way that's threatening their independence, that love gets really hard to access. It's kind of like they have a thermostat, and the thermostat is set to a certain level of closeness. Once you go above that level, a switch flips, and they start to cool down, and they pull away. And they don't even realize that they're doing it because it's so automatic. It's a defense mechanism. It's how they protect themselves. So their love is real. It just has limits. And those limits are determined by how much independence they need to feel safe. Once you understand that, you can start to work with it instead of against it. You can figure out what level of closeness they're capable of. And you can decide if that's enough for you. But here's the thing. Most people don't want that kind of limited love. Most people want to be all in. Most people want to know that their partner is all in too. And if that's what you want, then an avoidant person is not the right choice for you. And that's okay. That's actually a really healthy realization to have. Let me talk about what happens if you are the avoidant person in this scenario. If you're the one who has the avoidant attachment style, maybe you're listening to this and thinking, oh man, this is me. This is exactly how I operate. Well, first of all, I'm glad you're getting some clarity on your patterns. That's actually the first step to change. But I want you to understand something. Your loyalty to your independence is not protecting you. It might feel like it is. It might feel like you're keeping yourself safe by not depending on anyone. But what you're actually doing is protecting yourself from intimacy. And intimacy is one of the most fundamental human needs. So by protecting yourself from intimacy, you're actually causing yourself to suffer. Now, I'm not saying you should just change overnight and become this clingy, dependent person. That's not the answer either. But what you could do is start to become aware of when your need for independence is kicking in. Start to notice the moment when you feel the urge to pull away. And ask yourself, is this about protecting myself from something real? Or is this just my automatic response? Because sometimes your need for independence is valid. Sometimes you do need space. Sometimes it's healthy to prioritize yourself. But other times, your need for independence is you running away from the vulnerability that real connection requires. And there's a difference between the two. If you're avoidant, you might want to ask yourself some hard questions. What am I afraid of? Am I afraid of being controlled? Am I afraid of losing myself? Am I afraid of being abandoned? Am I afraid of not being enough? Because your avoidance is usually a response to some underlying fear. And until you identify that fear and work with it, you're going to keep repeating this pattern. You're going to keep pushing away people who care about you. You're going to keep convincing yourself that independence is more important than connection. You're going to keep telling yourself stories about why you don't need anyone. And you're going to live a life that looks successful on the outside, but feels empty on the inside. Because here's what nobody tells you about avoidance. They're often the loneliest people in the world. They've built all these walls to protect themselves. They've made independence their religion. But deep down, there's usually a scared kid in there who just wants to be loved, who wants to be accepted, who wants to matter to someone. But that scared kid is so afraid of being hurt that they've convinced themselves that needing anyone is weakness. So they push everyone away. And then they sit alone and wonder why nobody sticks around. And they blame it on the other people. They say people are too needy, people are too clingy, people want too much. But the real issue is that they won't let anyone in. So if this is you, I would encourage you to start working on that. Start going to therapy. Start examining your fears. Start asking yourself, what would happen if you actually let someone matter to you? What's the worst that could happen? Because usually when you actually examine it, the worst case scenario is not as bad as your nervous system is telling you it is. Now I want to give you some practical things you can do if you're in a relationship with an avoidant person. Because understanding the pattern is one thing, but knowing what to do with that understanding is another. First, stop chasing. This is so important. If you're the anxious person and you're chasing an avoidant person, you're just reinforcing the dynamic. They pull away, you chase. They pull away more, you chase harder. It's a cycle that doesn't end. So you need to stop. You need to get comfortable with the distance. You need to practice not reaching out. You need to practice sitting with the discomfort of not knowing where you stand, because the moment you stop chasing, things shift. Second, communicate your needs clearly. Don't hint at what you need. Don't hope that they'll pick up on your cues. Actually tell them. Tell them, I need consistent communication. Tell them, I need to know that you care. Tell them, I need to be a priority sometimes. And then watch what they do, because their actions will tell you everything you need to know about whether they can meet your needs. Third, set a timeline in your head. If things don't improve by this point, I'm going to walk away. This helps you not get stuck in the hoping phase for years and years. It gives you a goalpost, because without a timeline, you can stay stuck indefinitely. You can keep telling yourself that change is coming, that they're working on it, that it will get better. But time will just pass and nothing will change. And you'll be 5 years down the line in the same situation you're in right now. Fourth, work on yourself. Go to therapy, work on your anxiety, work on why you're attracted to unavailable people, work on your self-esteem. Because if you don't work on yourself, you're just going to keep finding yourself in the same dynamic with different people. Fifth, grieve what this relationship actually is, not what you want it to be. Stop hoping that they'll change. Stop telling yourself that if you just love them enough, they'll open up, because that's setting you up for disappointment. Instead, grieve the fact that this person is not capable of giving you what you need, and then decide if you can live with that. Okay, let me shift gears here and talk about something that I think is really important. The difference between someone who's avoidant and someone who's just not that into you. Because these can look very similar from the outside. An avoidant person pulls away. Someone who's not interested also pulls away. So how do you know which one you're dealing with? Here's the key. An avoidant person will pull away periodically, but they'll also come back. They'll create a cycle. But someone who's just not interested will gradually fade out and move on. An avoidant person will have moments where they seem really connected to you. They'll text you at 3 a.m. They'll share something vulnerable. They'll show up when they're having a good day, but then they'll disappear again. Someone who's not interested won't have those moments. They'll just be consistently unavailable. Also, an avoidant person usually has a pattern of this in all their relationships. They've been this way with other people too. So if you can find out about their past relationships, you might see the pattern. But someone who's not interested in you specifically might be perfectly capable of being present with someone else. So if you're trying to figure out which situation you're in, look at the pattern, look at the history, look at whether they have moments of connection or whether they're just consistently gone. That will tell you a lot. Now, here's something else that's important. A lot of people confuse avoidant attachment with introversion. These are not the same thing. Introversion is about how you get your energy. Introverts can be deeply attached. They might need more alone time than extroverts, but they can still be present and consistent in their relationships. Avoidant attachment is about fear. It's about an internal conflict between wanting connection and needing independence. So don't make excuses for someone by saying they're just an introvert. That's not what's happening. Also, a lot of people confuse avoidant attachment with being busy or having a full life. Yes, avoidants often have very full lives. They're often very successful. They're often doing a lot of things. But they're doing all those things as a way to avoid the vulnerability of real connection. They're filling their life with distractions. So their busyness is not separate from their avoidance. It's actually part of the same pattern. So if someone is telling you they're just too busy for a relationship right now, be careful, because usually what they're really saying is, I don't want to be that vulnerable with you. I don't want to depend on you. I don't want to make you important in my life. And maybe that's true. Maybe they really are just not in a place for a relationship. But maybe they're also an avoidant person looking for a reason to justify their distance. Let me talk about something else that I think is important. The role of social media in avoidant relationships. A lot of avoidants are very active on social media. They're posting, they're engaging with strangers, they're building their personal brand, they're creating content, but they're not actually letting their real relationships develop. And this is really interesting because it allows them to feel connected without actually being vulnerable. On social media, you can create a version of yourself that's curated. You can show what you want to show. You can hide what you want to hide. So an avoidant person can be very present online while being completely unavailable in their real life. And a lot of times their romantic partner has no idea about their online life, or they know about it, but they're not included in it. This is a huge red flag, because if someone is actively building a community and sharing with strangers, but they're not sharing with you, that's telling you something. That's telling you that they feel safer with distance than with intimacy. They feel safer with an audience that they don't have to actually connect with than with the one person who's asking for a real connection. All right, let me talk about what happens in the long term if you stay with an avoidant person. I want to be really honest about this. If you're in a relationship with an avoidant and you're not avoidant yourself, and you have needs for consistency and emotional availability, staying in this relationship is going to take a toll on you over time. You're going to start to doubt yourself. You're going to start to think there's something wrong with you. You're going to start to feel less than, because their inability to show up for you is going to feel like a rejection of you. Even though it's not, even though it's actually about them, your brain is going to interpret it as a reflection on your worth. So over time, your self-esteem is going to take a hit. Your mental health is going to take a hit. You might develop anxiety. You might develop depression. You might start to feel numb. You might start to lose yourself trying to figure out how to make this person care about you. This is why I'm saying you need to really think about whether this is worth it, because your mental health and your self-esteem are not negotiable. They matter more than this relationship. Now, let me talk about something positive. Let me talk about what happens when you finally decide that you deserve better. When you finally walk away from an avoidant person. At first, it's going to hurt. You're going to miss them. You're going to remember all the good times. You're going to forget why you left, and you're going to be tempted to reach out. This phase can last for weeks or months or even years, depending on how long you were together and how deeply you were invested. But eventually, something else happens. You start to feel relief. You start to realize how much energy you were spending trying to make someone care about you. You start to realize how exhausting the whole dynamic was, and you start to feel lighter. You start to have more energy. You start to feel more like yourself. And then, after some time, you start to attract different people. People who are actually available. People who are excited to be with you. People who don't make you question your worth. People who show up consistently. And you start to remember what it feels like to be in a relationship where you're not constantly fighting for scraps of affection. So I know it doesn't feel like it when you're in the thick of it, but walking away from an avoidant person is actually an act of self-love. It's you saying, I deserve better. It's you setting a boundary. It's you choosing yourself. And that's the message I want to leave you with. If you're in an avoidant relationship right now, you deserve better. You deserve to be with someone who is excited to be with you. You deserve to be someone's priority. You deserve consistency. You deserve reliability. You deserve to feel secure in your relationship. And if your current partner can't give you those things, that's on them. That's not on you. That's not a reflection of your worth. So I encourage you to take action. Start working on yourself. Set boundaries. Communicate your needs clearly. And if things don't improve, give yourself permission to walk away, because your happiness is worth it. Your mental health is worth it. Your self-esteem is worth it. You are worth it.